Hello, my name is Tony Watkins. I'll be walking you through this term in the course Introduction to Practicum. I am the clinical director for the CU Well Counseling Center, and I look forward to being with you this term. As many of the weeks as we're able, we will meet in person, whether synchronously via camera or in a face-to-face setting. Right now, this is April the 30th, 2020. We're coming toward the end of the 7 or 8 week that we've been kind of quarantined, and there's been no activity on campus, but the promise is that things will begin to change a bit toward the middle of May. But this Monday night, I'm not going to be able to be with you, so I've made this recording to be with you virtually. Tonight, I want to walk you through the 8 weeks that we're going to spend together. There may be some changes along the way depending on what your needs are, and my objective is to, as best I can, meet the needs of the students in the course at the time. So you can see on the screen, I've got the overview of the course that you'll be taking, Intro to Practicum, with the weekly assignments broken out. And at the end, on week 8, you'll take an exit test. You have to make 100% on the test, but it's an open book test. So as we go through the course, I may lift up pieces, questions from the test, just to make sure that we're tracking together. The final test, the exit test, is really about how do you do clinical services in the CU Well. Right now, a lot of the questions on the exam have to do with online therapy, synchronous telehealth services. One day this will be over. Whether we continue to do synchronous services or not is yet to be determined. So we will be back in the clinic hopefully soon, but I think we will continue to provide the option for as many people who need it to provide telehealth services. Each week, you'll be introduced to different skills, different elements of the Masters of Marriage and Family Therapy practicum skills that you'll need once you begin seeing clients. My objective really for each of you is that you begin practicum feeling pretty equipped, having an understanding, knowing the process that you will follow when you begin to see a client. We'll share some videos, at least one of the weeks, of what an intake session may look like. And you'll get lots of practice. So in July, when you actually start to see clients, you will have some experience. The program started the counseling center to CU Well because, really the alternative in programs is if you don't have a counseling center, you're out looking for your own practicum site, your own place to practice your skills as a clinician. And it's always been kind of, okay, good luck, sink or swim. And what we're doing in the CU Well Counseling Center is so different from that. You start out working with an experienced therapist. I've worked with a half a dozen or so students since we've opened the well. Nikki's has worked with several students. We have other experienced therapists like Mary Badami. She's a former licensure board chairperson. She's working with students, doing co-therapy. Christy Elliott, Dr. Ellis, Dr. Griffith, Dr. Bertram. We're all here to support you and to help you become the best marriage and family therapist you can. So, week one, as you can see on your screen, we're going to review today the student learning outcomes. We're not going to spend a lot of time because they're in your syllabus. You all know how to read. You wouldn't be in a graduate program if you didn't. You all know how to learn. If you didn't, you wouldn't be in a graduate program, or you won't make it very far in a graduate program if you don't know how to learn. I want to break down the practicum requirements. To do that, we're going to open up the manual that we've developed for the counseling center, and we're going to discuss pre-practicum requirements. You're coming up on the winding down on pre-practicum requirements, but we'll look at those just so you can check them off the list and make sure that you in fact have met all those requirements. In this document for this course, I provide the syllabus, and we'll go over that in a moment. I'm going to go through the entire 8 weeks with you first, and then we'll come back and really hone in on some particulars for tonight. Again, I've included the policy and procedure manual. There's always the options and opportunities for it to change. There's been a lot of changes over the last 7 or 8 weeks with COVID-19. We've really had to develop a whole new approach, a whole new set of processes, so we could continue to provide care to our clients. Continuum of care is very important. Continuity of care is very important in our field. So we were able to transition, not smoothly, but transition quickly from seeing our clients face to face at CU Well to seeing them, working with them via Zoom telehealth services. So last week we saw 25 clients, including couples and families and individuals. So if you haven't had the opportunity to take the course that Dr. Bertram and I offer, it's a 15-hour course. The name of it is Technology Assisted Services. It's a 15-hour certificate course. It is required in Kentucky by the Marriage and Family Therapy Licensure Board that you have such a course. It has to be approved by the board, and as far as I know, ours is the only course like this is approved by the licensure board. But Dr. Bertram and I have participants from all over the country: Hawaii, Georgia, Alabama, California, Texas, Oklahoma. The people from all over the country who take this course with us. We've been teaching this at least once a month for about the last 3 years. And so if you think that you want to do some telehealth services, if we're able to continue to provide those services, you'll be required to take that 15-hour course. Now, Dr. Bertram and I give it to all of our students for free. So you can ask me when the next opportunity to take the course is, and let me know, and I'll sign you up so you can take that course. One of the nice things about that is when you become a marriage and family therapist associate, to be able to do any technology assisted services in the state of Kentucky, you have to have the course. So you will have already had this course. It will have been taken. You don't have to pay for it later on. You don't have to worry about taking that later. I mentioned earlier that there is an exit test, and it does require a score of 100%. You don't have to make 100% the first time. I'll score it and send you back and send the test back to you and let you know which ones you got wrong. It's a true false. So if it was false, and you got it wrong, it's going to be true, right? But I do ask that you cite, the correct answer if you're having to make a correction to it. I'll give you a link to that test in this document as well. And I'm going to include this document in an email that I'll send you along with a link to the recording of this training session. So that's week one. Week two, we're going to move right into what we do as therapists, documentation. There's a course I've been teaching for several years. It's called The Golden Thread of Counseling and Psychotherapy. In counseling, there's this continuity that needs to be present. And it begins with assessment. Assessment is our gathering data, gathering information from our clients. How do we do that? Well, we ask a lot of questions. We ask about their family of origin. We ask about their family, biological family, about relationships, about health concerns. It's called a biopsychosocial. So we want to know about what's going on with them biologically, with them psychologically, with them socially, and also spiritually. Campbellsville is a Christian university, and our program is an integrated program. And what that means is we integrate spirituality, particularly from a Christian aspect. Doesn't mean that you have to be a Christian to be in our program. Uh, we have several people in our program that have come through the program who are not Christians. Maybe perhaps they're people of different faiths, or perhaps they don't have a faith perspective on life at all, and that's fine. But because because of who we are at Campbellsville, we do have an integrated program, and I want you to know that we're very respectful of people's faith positions, whether it aligns with what I believe or anybody else believes. And as you walk into the therapy room with somebody, it's going to be very important that you're able to honor their faith position, their worldview, their sexual orientation, their race, their age, their ethnicity. There's so many aspects of what makes us as an individual, and we have to be able to really uh, honor the person that we're sitting with, and that includes their faith position or the lack of a faith position. So, um, assessment, we're gathering a lot of data. I'm going to teach you some assessment instruments. If you've taken Dr. Bertram's psychopathology class, you've been introduced to the DSM cross-cutting level 1 measure and the DSM cross-cutting level 2 measures. And we'll work with those as we move through this 8 weeks. We do have a three session process in the CU Well that you will work with. And again, you're not thrown in and say, good luck, swim it, swim, make it or don't. You'll have somebody who's experienced working with you, and they're there to guide you, not to lead you, but to guide you. And we want you to become fully who you are and bring yourself fully as a therapist into um, into the room where you're working with clients. We want you to be you. We want you to be the best you can be as a therapist. So the golden thread, you're gathering lots of information. That's called assessment. That data that you gather, you'll use it to develop a diagnosis of a client. And the diagnosis will lead to the treatment plan that you do collaboratively with the client. That's a 3 session process. Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 sessions, depending on what all's going on with the client. Some may be more emotionally fragile, some may be more emotionally charged. But for the most part, most clients will be able to follow that 3 session process of assessment, diagnosis, and treatment planning. So we're going to work all the way through the treatment planning in the first progress note. So you'll have that experience over these 8 weeks that we're together. Notice that I provide hyperlinks. So, the golden thread is, I did not provide a hyperlink for that. I have a recorded for almost all 8 weeks of this course. I've done a recording for weeks that we're not able to meet together. There's other things that perhaps I'm obligated to do, but want to make sure that you always have the content that that you need for that week. But we'll be meeting, I'm pretty sure, together, synchronously live on a Zoom meeting on May the 11th. And so I'll walk you through that. Some people ask for the recording just so they can go back and view it later, and I'm always happy to share that with you. I've got just about all the videos that I've done. I've created a YouTube channel for CU Well students, and some people ask for the link to that YouTube channel so they can assess the information that I put up on that channel. Week 3, we're going to talk more about assessment. And this is so vitally important that you understand the how, the what, and the when of assessment. This is a very important clinical skill. How do you do assessment? What are you assessing? What information are you wanting to gather? And when do you do it? You're going to hear me say this many times, but we assess every session. It can be my first session, it could be my 100th session. But I'm always assessing the client, looking for changes, assessing for risk, assessing for change. Week 4, I'm going to introduce you to Jim. He's a fictitious client. I call him Jim Fictitious. You'll watch about a 15-minute video. I play Jim. Jim is a compilation of many clients that I've worked with over the years. And Jim will be reporting out demographic information and general background information in his 15 minutes of the recording. You're not going to be able to ask Jim questions, but he's going to give you a lot of data. In fact, Jim is pretty much walking through the client information form that we require of every client that comes into the CU Well. So it's just general background information, what's going on right now, what changes we like, what are the presenting problems, those kind of things. So Jim will talk about that, share a little bit about himself. But your task as you listen to the recording is you're going to create and document a hypothesis of what the DSM diagnosis may be for Jim. And I'm only going to ask you to write a 1 or 2 paragraph hypotheses. And if you're not familiar with clinically what I'm talking about with a hypothesis is you hear some data, you're listening to what goes on with Jim, and you start to think about what may be going on with Jim. Am I hearing signs of depression? Am I hearing signs of suicide? Am I hearing signs of mania? So we're always, developing, creating a hypothesis with clients. So after you write your hypothesis, you'll simply email that 1 or 2 paragraphs to me. I'll review them. In your email, I want you to submit the DSM cross-cutting level 1 measure. That's easily found. If you've had psychopathology, you're familiar with that. If you're not, I'll discuss that more with you and help you there. But you'll listen to what Jim's symptoms are, and you'll email the cross-cutting. I'll email you the cross-cutting 1 level 1 measure that Jim Fictitious has completed for you, and so I'll email that to you for you to score. And then you'll send back to me a list according to the scores. What are the cross-cutting level 2 measures that need to be administered to Jim. And so if if this seems fuzzy, confusing right now, we'll talk more about it. I want to make sure that you're successful in this, and it'll make sense when we're able to meet together and talk more about this. So you're going to use the data that you've collected to provide a diagnosis. You've done your one or two paragraph hypotheses about what's going on. Now you've gotten Jim's cross-cutting level one uh, measures. You scored it. Maybe you see that depression scores high in the cross-cutting level one measure. You want to go deeper, so you're asking Jim to do the cross-cutting level two measure for depression to just affirm your suspicions, your what you heard him say. And so, again, this is all about process. Therapy, what we do in therapy is about process. Now, depending on who you read, who you listen to, about 80 to 85% of what we do as a therapist is our joining, our relationship that we build with clients. And that's so true. If you're able to connect with people easily, um, that goes a long way. And they're feeling that they can trust you, that they can be open and honest with you. But if you don't have the clinical skills, if you don't have a theoretical model that you really know, that you can access that theoretical model that will guide the work that you do with a client. Your personality, your easygoingness, your kind-heartedness, that connection that you have with the client, it's going to run out. Because if your client doesn't feel like they're experiencing any change because of the time that they're spending with you, they're just going to drop out. They may blame themselves, and maybe they say, well, Tony, bless his heart, he's such a nice guy, must be a really good therapist, but I don't see any change. Maybe I'm just too broken. Or maybe they think that, well, Tony's just, he's not able to help me with my problems. So your personality, your interpersonal skills are only going to take you so far. I don't want you to worry. You're going to learn theoretical models, but I want you to know that that's something that you're going to have to work on. The program introduces you to systemic thinking. It introduces you to lots of different systems models. It teaches you the things that you need to know so you cause no harm for clients. But the work of learning a model is going to be on you. And that learning is never going to stop. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I'm always learning something new. I'm always going deeper in learning and understanding models. So in the fifth week, you'll review your lesson. I'm going to share with you um, a presentation of training I do is called documenting your work notes, because your notes are going to be so important. If you don't know how to write appropriate notes that explain what's going on in therapy, then you're missing a key clinical um, function. And it's so vitally important that you're able to write good clinical progress notes. So we're going to work on that. You're also going to watch a video. It's about another 15-minute video. It's the second video that you'll have with Jim. Um, And after you watch the second video with Jim, he fleshes out a little bit more of his story. Um, you're going to create a diagnostic impression, and that's where you start with your client. That's your starting point. You've had your hypothesis. You're kind of guessing what may be going on because of some of the symptoms you've heard. But now you've got enough data. You've done the DSM cross-cutting level 1 measure. You've given the cross-cutting level 2 measures. You've gotten enough data back. You've interviewed Jim. Now it's time for you to make a diagnosis. You'll use from Theranos. Theranos is an electronic health record that we use in the CUL to document all the work that we do with clients. Part of a client's case is the initial assessment and diagnostic codes tab. And we'll work through this. In fact, early on, you'll be given access to Theranos. I'll ask you to create your account in Theranos, and I'll give you some dummy clients that are in Theranos so you can begin to work with those clients in Theranos and start getting comfortable with the electronic health record. But you'll take the document part of the case, known as the initial assessment and diagnostic codes, and you'll use that as a template to create your diagnostic impression. You'll email that to me, and again, you're going to be using the tools from week 2 and 3, namely the DSM cross-cutting level 1 and level 2 measures. Week 6, you'll review a video. This is a PowerPoint lesson on documenting your work. Actually, I think I put that in there twice. So I said we're going to look at that in week 5, but actually we don't look at that until week 6. So I'll change this document. We're going to talk about SOAP notes. SOAP notes are one of the most probably prevalent or prominent processes of taking notes that there is. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but just know that you'll learn about SOAP notes. You'll get to imagine the response of Jim Fictitious, this person that we've been working with, as you enter in the subjective portion of the note. Anyway, we'll work more on that together, but that's what week 6 is going to be, is learning how to take good notes. Week 7, I say we're going to meet on campus, but we may not be back on campus yet, but we'll work. We may work in teams as you get to practice your skills developing that you've been developing during this course. What I did this term, and everybody really liked it, was I had each person kind of give a case presentation of their diagnostic impression and what we did back in week 5. And everybody said that was really helpful because as each person shared they went through their process of that initial assessment diagnostic codes, everybody had a little bit different perspective. One person might lift up one element of what they noticed in Jim and somebody else didn't. And so that was, I think what was so helpful about that was, I think I had 8 or 9 in my intro to practicum course this term. And they said that while they really began to see how different therapists could punctuate different information, and that really stood out. So we'll probably do that again instead of do the dyadic uh, work of practicing with a client. I may have you during the term do a geniogram for Jim, just to give you a little bit more practice. That won't take a lot of time, but we may do that in week 7. Then week 8, there'll be a case review on the client. You'll complete the intake information, assessment data used in making the diagnosis, and you're going to present a treatment plan. And we'll talk about that. There's a template in Theranos for treatment planning that I'll orient you to as well. So you'll have that as a guide. So that's the 8 weeks that we're going to be together, and I'll email this entire document to you. Right now, I want to take a few minutes and I want us to look at the syllabus together. And there's a lot of information here in the syllabus, and I'm waiting for the link to open. So I'm going to just, in a brief way, walk through this. Again, every one of you are capable of reading this yourself, but I just want to lift a few things up for you, just so you can hear them maybe for the first time. Hopefully it's not. But, there are several student learning outcomes, SLOs. Um, it's important that you understand what cultural competence is. And that's more than just understanding that, I'm a white guy working with an African American person or a person from another country or so different socioeconomic background. Um, so these are the student learning outcomes. There's information in here of how those are benchmarked with alumni. We do a lot of uh, keeping records and asking questions and doing surveys and evaluations. We evaluate our program to a very to a great degree because we're always wanting to make sure that we're improving our program so that we can produce the best students that we can. And I want you to know that you guys are walking in the path of some very, very strong students, folks who graduated our programs, who are leaders in the community, leaders in the state, and I have no doubt that you won't follow along, and you'll do great things as well. So again, I'm not going to spend time because reading this to you, you don't need that. But I'm going to just scroll through it as a reminder that this is something that is here for you, but it's your responsibility to read it and understand it. There's information in here about if we're at the clinic and there's inclement weather, how do you find out if school's canceled? What do you do if there's an emergency in the clinic? And this practicum, intro to practicum, does not have a grade, does not receive academic hours, but it is a portion of the practicum requirement. And so your compliance for assignments and attendance is required to begin practicum 1. So the breakdown of what we're doing each week is in the syllabus, and I provide you even more detailed version of that in the document that I just walked through with you. I want to look at the manual and the handbook. it to open up in just a moment. I'm hopeful. Hyperlink is not exactly working, so I'm going to try a different route. So there's a lot of information in this policy and procedure manual. Notice that there are addendums to the policies because of the COVID-19 that I had to go in and do a lot of new policies, different policies, because there's a different way that we have to work when we're working with technology assisted services. But a few things I just want to point out. Pre-practicum requirements, this is where you need to be checking off as we go. Um, Need to review and submit per the instructions the MFT policy and procedures manual receipt and acknowledgement. That's on the next page. If you haven't, um, read through the policy yet and submitted that receipt, you need to do so before you start practicum. You cannot start seeing clients until I have a copy of that from you. Um, you need to be attending supervision groups 1 hour a week. Now, when we opened the clinic in January, we were uh, our idea was to offer observation hours, and these were called alternative relational observation hours, and that's where you could come into the clinic and in our media room, you could come and watch a live counseling session via camera. And then we would come in and process that. And for every hour that you viewed, you could get 1 hour of alternative observation, relational observation hours. And that would count as 1 hour toward the 500 hours of client contact time that you had to have. Well, COVID came along. We had to put an end to that. Um, and we found that there just weren't a lot of students who were able to make it in an extra night a week to Dixie Highway campus to do that. So we decided to kind of put that on pause for now anyway. So part of that was we wanted to, take advantage of one of the things that we could do that the commission allows us to do. Um, but the other was we really wanted to start to orient students into the practice of therapy before they ever started seeing clients. And that worked really well. The students who came to the observation times really appreciated what the experience was, and they said it was very helpful. Um, but because of situation being what it is, we had to take that off the table. But we still want pre-practicum students to be oriented to what therapy is. So what we've decided to do was have pre-practicum students, as soon as they enter the program, start attending group supervision. And group supervision meets once a week, each week of the term. Um, there can be up to 8 practicum students in the group, and they'll take turns sharing video from sessions clients that they're working with. And then the group supervisor will, uh, we all lead a little bit differently, but the group supervisor will, ask questions. The team members can ask questions, and it's a very encouraging time. It's a great time to learn. But we want intro to practicum or pre-practicum students attending group supervision each week because it does a couple of things for you. It introduces you to the students who are more advanced in the program, but it also introduces you to the language, the processes of therapy, which is going to be very helpful when you step into the therapy room for the first time. It's not a requirement, but it is strongly recommended that all pre-practicum students participate to enhance your experience in the program. Um, you have to complete 12 hours of individual counseling. If you haven't started your 12 hours of counseling yet, we offer it for free. If you want to see your own therapist, you're welcome to do that, but you have to pay for it. But if you haven't started your 12 hours of counseling, you can't start practicum until you have those 12 hours completed. Dr. Hollis has a list of alumni who have graciously volunteered to provide the counseling at no cost. We don't ask questions. All we ask is that the therapist you work with signs a form at the end and says, yeah, Tony Watkins attended 12 counseling sessions. We're not going to ask any other questions. We don't care what you talk about. But we do want you to feel supported. We want you to know that you're not in this alone, and can be a very stressful time for people. And we want you to experience what it's like to receive therapy. There's so many people who enter the therapy world who've never been in therapy. And we know from the students who are going through that uh, or have gone through the 12 hours, they said it was really helpful to know what it feels like to be on the other side. You have to complete the Intro to Practicum class. You have to have 18 academic course hours, and I break down the courses there that you have to have. So, individual supervision and group supervision before you enter Practicum 1. You have 2 weeks before the next term starts to secure your individual supervisor as well as join a supervision group. And, you have to register with Nikki for group supervision. You'll be given a list of approved supervisors. We have a cadre of supervisors with the CUL, 6 very wonderful, experienced therapists and supervisors that you'll get to choose from. And, Nikki will give you that list. You'll have to sign a supervision contract with your individual supervisor. You have to do that each practicum 1, 2, and 3. There's a copy of that on page 36 in this manual. You also, 2 weeks before the next term starts and you start seeing clients, you have to submit an availability form. And what that simply is where you let us know which hours on which days that you're able to see clients. And that's how we're going to schedule you. If you say I can only see clients on Friday at 5 o'clock, that's the only hour of the week I can work, you're probably not going to get any clients. So the more availability that you can commit to, the more clients or more availability we have of scheduling you. I want you to know that we take it very seriously trying to get every one of our students clients that they're working with. So we keep a list of clients, how many clients each student has. And so like if Billy Bob has 5 clients, but Jimmy only has 2 clients, Jimmy's going to be built up to 5 clients before Billy Bob gets another client. So we have a next in turn list, and but if a client says I can only see somebody on Wednesdays and you're next in line to get a new client, but you can't see clients on Wednesday, we have to skip over you. Now we'll come back to you, but we're going to have to skip over you because it's about meeting the client's needs. You have to set up your Theranest account, and we'll talk about this probably week 3 of how you set your calendar availability in Theranest. And so that information is on page 55 to 57. And if you haven't completed these steps, you're not going to be able to see clients. Uh, it's your responsibility. We have the information here. We go. That's why we started this intro to practicum class, to make sure that you know we're trying to make it as clear as we can. You also have to fill out you know attest to this document that you've been provided a copy of the policy, you read it, and you understand and you agree to follow the policy. This is just information, the hours of the clinic, the days it's open, all the staff, how to get a hold of us. I've got a sample. Uh, if you're doing full time and you're going to do the program in 2 years, this tells you, um, kind of gives you a snapshot: pre-practicum, practicum 1, practicum 2, and practicum 3. And so after 100 hours in practicum 1 of working in the CU well, if you come and say, hey, I've got an opportunity to work over here at this school working with kids, um, and they're an approved site, we have to approve the place where you go to work to get clinical hours, because they have to have a standard that meets our standard. That's something we're continuing to work on. Uh, we're, we're working to get some really solid sites for our students to work, where they can get relational hours, they can get some good experience with different populations providing counseling. But you have to do your first 100 hours of counseling in the CUL. Why? Because we want to make sure you're equipped. We want to make sure that you're ready to go out into wherever that approved site is and work with clients in a really confident manner. We're not throwing anybody else out into the ocean to sink or swim. We're going to make sure that you start out in the shallow end of the pool, that there's a lifeguard right there by you, and you got your floaties on. So you know, it's people worry about how in the world am I going to get my 500 hours. Believe me, folks get their 500 hours, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure that you're able to do that. Here's a 3-year example. Sometimes people go through at a slower pace. Uh, so I've broken down, the terms, the months, how many practicum hours you will have completed at the end of each term, how many cumulative practicum hours you've had, how many individual hours, group supervision hours, and so forth. Practicum, there's two parts to practicum. I think this is really important for you to understand. There's the practicum part, that's the client contact. That's doing face-to-face counseling with individuals, with relationships, couples, with families, or you can do groups. And that's 500 hours that you have to have. Now, 200 of those hours have to be relational hours. That means there's more than one person in the counseling room with you, and they're either first degree related, they're in a committed relationship where they're doing life together. Maybe it's people who are just living together. Um, it could be a family. Of those 200 relational hours, 100 hours can be uh, what we call alternative relational hours. And that means you can be doing groups. Uh, you can do a couples group from your church. You can do a blended family group. You can do um, if you have a sibling, you can do a siblings group. There's lots of opportunities and ways that you can get these alternative relational hours. And that can be really helpful to because 200 relational hours, that's 40% of the 500 hours that you have to have. The other 300 hours can be just people one-on-one, individual. But so we'll talk to you if you have ideas about how you can earn these alternative relational hours. We'll work with you and see if we can't approve that for you. Um, of that 100 alternative relational hours, 50 hours can be accumulated by live observation. And that's what I was sharing with you we were doing at the well, where students would come in and watch live sessions. This is also called reflecting teams. And once we get back in the clinic, we're going to try to start reflecting teams up again. So you got the client contact, face-to-face hours. I've explained the breakdown of those 500 hours. Then you have supervision. You have to have supervision every term that you're in practicum. Now, we strongly recommend that you begin attending group supervision as soon as you enter the program. But once you start practicum, you have to attend group supervision 1 hour a week, every week that the term is meeting. And you have to attend 1 hour of individual supervision every week that you're seeing clients in the program. You have to have 100 hours of supervision. And if you're doing the 2 year program, for example, you've only got 50 weeks. So you have to average 2 hours a week of supervision, 1 hour of group supervision, 1 hour of individual supervision. And you have to, 50 of these hours have to be observable data. So you have to be recording your client sessions. We want to see you work. We don't want you just telling us about what's going on. So you're recording those sessions and you're bringing that in and you're sharing it in group supervision. You're sharing that in individual supervision. And so that's very important that you understand that practicum and supervision run concurrently. Practicum client contact hours 500, supervision hours 100. And that is every term that you're in the program, you have to be participating in that. So there's 4 levels of practicum. Pre-practicum is academic 0 to 18 hours. Practicum 1, this is academic hours 19 to 36. Practicum 2 is academic hours 37 to 45. And practicum 3, academic hours 46 to 60. Now, when you become a practicum 3 student, then we ask you to become the mentor. We ask you to, to start sharing your skills and your experience as a therapist with Practicum 1 students. You can still work outside. You can work at another, placement somewhere if you want, but you still have a commitment to work in the CU well so many hours a week. Talked about prerequisites. If you want to take on alternative relational hours, there's a permission form that you have to complete, and this has to be signed off by Dr. Hollis. Section 1 simply talks about professionalism. You know, how are you to behave? How are you to, dress? What about absences? Everything you want to know is in the policy. So we're not going to read it again. You know how to read. Here's a list of the days that we observe as vacation days, even over Christmas break, and even if summer during the summer, the CU well is a counseling center, and so we're doing business. We're in the business of training you while providing clinical services to the community. And so this is not something you can take lightly. This is a very important aspect of your training process. And so each term, when you submit your availability for that term, we're going to hold you accountable to that. You can't say I can see clients on Tuesday and Thursdays and decide, next Thursday I'm going to slough off. I don't feel like seeing clients. Guess what? You're in a professional role now, so we're going to hold you to those standards. Um, just let you read through this. I've put in some slides to give you step by step instructions on how to do everything from uh, creating client or accessing clients in the CU well. Um, Everything you need to know you're going to find in this handbook. I'm going to move down to section 2. Um, Section 3 is on practice procedures. This is the 3-session process that I talked to you about earlier. Um, I would encourage you to just take some time over this term, pull up the document, and just go through it a few times. Here's how do I handle a client's request for records. It's called release of information. Give you hot links there. What do I do if a client no shows? What's our client attendance policy? Um, what do I do if I have to terminate a client? There's a letter that you have to send. There's a process for everything. Section 4 is about supervision. Here I provide you a link to the supervision contract. I'll line out what the different terms around supervision is, um, so you can read more about that if you're not real clear. Um, so, and then after section 4 is where I get into the addendums to the policy for COVID-19. And I'm not sure, to what extent this will have a long-term impact, but uh, we may find out this summer that we can no longer do any telehealth services at all. Um, and if that's the case, then we won't do any more telehealth services. But everything that we need uh, is in place to provide telehealth services. Everything from the conversations, what we communicate with clients, uh, documents and processes that you need to know as a student intern. And then there's a section on for our schedulers, the administrative folks who are such a vital part of what we do in the CU well. So, lots of information. If you can't sleep this week, you got light reading you can do, and I look forward to being with you this term. And if you my information on how to contact me is at the top of the syllabus. You have all this information. I look forward to getting to know you, and I look forward to working with you in the CU well after this term. Y'all have a blessed night, and thank you for your time.